Hi students, and welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian and I'm streaming to you from beautiful Victoria here in Western Canada. I hope that all of you have had a great week and I hope you're looking forward to an awesome weekend. Students, in this class we are looking at an IELTS Writing Task 1 question, which is comparing park maps, a before and a current state of a park. We'll look at those in just a moment. This is a members chat class. Of course, everybody is welcome to watch. If you would like to join the chat, you need to be a channel member. You need to click the join button next to the subscribe button. Welcome, Fuang. Hi, Domenico Habibe. Nice to see you in the class. Welcome, Carolina, our chat moderator. Good to have all of you with me this morning, because for me, it is the morning. It is 6:30 in the a.m. This lesson is presented to you by aehelp.com for academic IELTS. Visit us there. This is an academic IELTS Task 1 that we're looking at today, because this is our academic English Help YouTube channel. For the general IELTS, check out gieltshelp.com and take a look at task 1 there. For the writing, it's very different. It's an email or a letter that you write to your friend, and we have some good examples of those kinds of task 1 writing essays, narrative essays on those websites. So for the academic, it's aehelp.com. It looks like this. You can join our premium IELTS package by clicking the big red join now button. That's just right above my head there. It's a one-time payment for lifetime access. We are an IDP affiliate. We're a British Council partner at IELTS Test Registration Center. I'm a British Council agent. You are in great hands with us. When you click that join now button, you can enter the code NOVEL9 coming from one of our more recent videos, and that will get you an extra 10% discount. Again, for the general IELTS videos, task 1, visit us at gieltshelp.com. Click that big red button there. That's just right above my head, and you are good to go. Students, we do have apps for you. The apps will link to the websites. Academic IELTS Help will link to aehelp.com. General IELTS Help will link to gieltshelp.com. We also have some really good blogs for you. I'm going to put this blog into the chat. This is a new blog that we just put up that tells you what IELTS actually is, what you have to pay attention to. And Instagram, we put up vocabulary. We put up reels to help teach you quick sentences and ways to answer in the speaking section. So check out Instagram, follow us there, IELTS_AEHelp and gieltshelp. And of course, if you have questions, we are here to answer those for you. Send me an email, adrian@aehelp.com or admin@aehelp.com. Amazon does have our books. You can look for AE Help's Academic IELTS and G Help's General IELTS. So lots and lots of resources, all to help you understand the IELTS, understand that it's an English proficiency exam, help you with the right strategies and tips, and help you to improve. It is all there for you. We will have listening part 3 and 4 for subscribers after this task 1 class. Make sure to join for that. Subscribing to the channel is free and you will get notifications of these live classes. And then tomorrow we'll do speaking part 2 and speaking part 3. In the meantime, check out this video. It's a really good one, and I'm very curious about your opinion on the new technique for vocabulary in the speaking section that we're using in this video. Welcome, Elizabeth. Hi, Anahita. Nice to have more members joining in. Welcome, Amra, chat moderator. Great to have 2 of you in here helping this class go nice and smooth, helping members with their questions. Let's jump into this IELTS Task 1 question. So, students, you're sitting the IELTS exam. You did 1 hour of listening and answering questions, roughly 1 hour, maybe a little bit less. You did 1 hour of reading, okay, so 3 passages in the academic, 40 questions, about 13 questions roughly, 13, 14 each. And now you get to the writing section. You look at the writing section and you see this question. Read the question really carefully. Okay, so let's do this together. All right. IELTS writing task 1. You should spend about 20 minutes on this task. Spend 20 minutes on task 1 and spend 40 minutes on task 2. Practice this timing at home. Task 1 is worth 1/3 of your mark. Task 2 is worth 2/3 of your mark. So 33% versus 64% roughly. Or 67%, I should say, roughly. Start with task 1. Okay, task 1 should be the easier task as long as you practiced and you know what you need to do. In task 1, you are interpreting and reporting information. And all of the information is in front of you. You just have to use your English to interpret that information. In task 2, you have to do more planning, more thinking. So it requires a bit more brain strategy than task 1 in some sense. As long as you know what you're doing, task 1 should be kind of like a recipe, like how to bake a cake. Okay, and I'm going to teach you that recipe in this class for this particular type of question dealing with maps. Okay. All right. Here we go. So let's read the question. Okay. Make it a little bit bigger. I think I can stretch it just slightly. I'm going to check, make sure it's all in the screen still for you. Okay. Maybe a little bit smaller. All right. Here we go. So the plans below show a park when it was first opened and the same park today. Summarize the information by describing the main features and making comparisons where relevant. And this looks like it was probably a past IELTS question in the last few years. Write at least 150 words. That means it's the minimum word count. Yes, they do count your words in the paper-based and the computer-based. Computer-based is super easy because it tells the word count. Paper-based, they just count the lines. They'll count 4 or 5 lines. They'll take an average. They'll multiply. Okay, so but they do count the words, and it says at least. Of course, always pay attention to that. I'm emphasizing that for new viewers. Usually, high band essays, like let's say band 7 to 9, tend to be a bit longer. Okay, are longer, like 200 words. Okay. There's definitely enough information in these graphs, charts, maps to write 200 words of good information, so you can do that. Okay, so again, the plans below show a park when it was first opened and the same park today. Summarize the information by describing the main features and making comparisons where relevant. So, of course, the next natural step is to take a look at the image. And we got the park here. Always go top down, left to right when you're looking at these graphs or charts. So just like as if you're reading a book, right? It's top down, left to right. So top down, left to right indicates that the title of this diagram is Madison Park in 1920. As soon as you see 1920, there should be a thought in your head. What should that thought be? Elizabeth, there you are. I see you and Dominic are having a good little discourse about the exam. Habibe, Anahita, what should be the first thought? So your brain should always be working actively throughout your IELTS exam. Amra, very good. So Amra says it's a century ago. Yeah, it's roughly 100 years ago, right? So if we go a little bit lower, you can see it says in the next picture, Madison Park today. While today, of course, in this case would equal 2023. And just a little bit of quick simple math here. 1920 minus 2023 equals roughly about 100 years, 103 to be exact. So more or less roughly a century ago. Okay, so right away when you see a map like this and you're thinking critically, immediately you can identify that the first map is roughly 103 years ago, which is a century ago. Okay. A 100 years or a century ago. Why is that important? Because of course using those words, that vocabulary, giving that information will definitely help improve your score. Okay, everybody clear? So right away you're thinking critically. Okay, all right, now you don't so in the first 1 or 2 minutes when you're doing this, you don't need to deep dive. Deep dive means go into like a lot of details and detailed thinking. You just kind of need to have a general understanding of what you're looking at. Okay, you'll have time to go into more details after. So again, left to right, you notice there's some seats, there's a rose garden, some more seats, there's an entrance there, another rose garden, some pond for plants, there's a stage for musicians, a fountain, an open space, more seats, there's another rose garden, seats, there's an entrance there, there's a greenhouse, and you're just kind of quickly skimming with your eyes over top of this. Now you see that here you have Arnold Avenue, of course, hopefully nobody missed that. I did. And then you have Eldon Street here. Now when you look at the next image, of course you're going to realize that the streets are the same. You've got an entrance here, which is the same as before. You've got a rose garden there, that's the same, but now you have a cafe, you have a children's play area. The musician stage is now an amphitheater. There's a rose garden that's in the middle here. There's some kind of a water feature. And at the very bottom here in the corner, there's an entrance to the underground car park or the parking lot. Okay. All right, so some similarities, some changes at first glance. Okay, the main features are that the park caters to the public, it caters to performances, it caters to visitors. It has some natural environment, some flora, some gardens, right? Okay, so let's go step by step. Okay, to give you a little bit more information for all of you watching. The task 1 of the academic IELTS needs 3 parts. Okay, it has 3 parts, or we could say 3 paragraphs. Right? It has the introduction, the overview, and the analyses. The analyses includes a little bit of a summary. Okay, summarizing your analysis or your interpretation of the information that you're given. All right, so starting with the introduction, again, like I said, it's like a recipe. It's like baking cookies. Okay, so it's like step 1, get all of the necessary equipment that you require for baking the cookies. Get a bowl, get a mixer. Okay, turn the oven on. All right, so it's like a recipe. So the introduction is basically a paraphrase of the question with details added from the graph, chart, or map. Okay, in this case, of course, it's kind of a map or a diagram. So here, the original sentence is, the plans below show a park when it was first opened and the same park today. Okay, so how can we paraphrase the plans below? What do you think, viewers? What would be a good way to do that? All right. Mal, this is not general English IELTS writing. This would be academic. The general IELTS doesn't really have maps or diagrams. It really only has, I've only seen emails and letters so far. Okay, so if you saw this presented as a general IELTS one, it's not. Okay. All right, so Fuang says these two given maps. Okay. Let me take that, Fuang. So Fuang says we could start it this way. We could say these two given maps. Okay. Amra says the two blueprints. Okay. Blueprint, Angel, is the technical diagram for a building. It's a very good question. Okay, so the word blueprint, some vocabulary here for you. And the reason why it's called a blueprint is because traditionally it was printed on this special kind of blue paper. So a blueprint means a technical diagram of a building or structure. Or infrastructure. Okay, it's usually done by an engineer. Realistically, these actually aren't quite blueprints, so it's okay to use the word blueprint on the IELTS, but you should know that a blueprint is more technical. So if you're looking at the architect diagram of a house where it shows you the measurements, like usually students, you should know that an actual fact, a blueprint would include information like this. It would have something like 150 meters this way. It would say this is like 10 meters. Okay, so it would have a lot of like actual technical information as well included. All right, but for IELTS, it's okay to say blueprint. All right. Okay. All right. Elizabeth says the two images show the development. Okay. Good. All right. Good. And I'm happy to see that none of you are really writing words like below. Fuang, even saying given is unnecessary. It's kind of weird to tell your reader that, oh, sneeze coming, that you have a location for maps or that they're given. It just is. You really, so in task one, when you're looking to get a high band score, and you want to practice this at home. So when you're looking to get a high band score, you should really focus on minimizing any unnecessary words, okay? When the examiners see a lot of unnecessary words, or fillers they're called, okay? So this is actually quite an important tip, and I haven't emphasized this, I think, in past classes enough. So this, keep attention to this, okay, or pay attention to this. So at home, when practicing writing, task 1 and task 2, focus to eliminate any unnecessary words. This is also referred to in writing as wordiness. Okay, in good writing, and especially at the college and university level, wordiness is highly disliked by readers, professors, teachers. Okay, so focus to eliminate any unnecessary words called wordiness, such as indicating the location of information, like maps below. And I'm glad that I didn't see too much of that. Or even saying something like given maps. Okay. All right, so you don't want to have any information where the reader's kind of like, duh, I know. That's an extreme way to show you that, but that is basically the concept behind it, where it's like, duh, I know. Especially if somebody is not looking at the maps, right? They're just looking at your essay. They don't see the maps below. It's like, oh, I only see my knees below your essay. So just be really careful with that. Okay, the more concise, the better. And for band 7, 8, 9, definitely the examiners are looking for that. So if they see a lot of template, unnecessary words, they're going to think lower scores. Okay, keep that in mind. So if examiners read many template or unnecessary words, they will be thinking in the band 6 to 7 range at best. Okay, keep that in mind. Okay. All right, I see Domenico, Elizabeth, James are kind of anxious to get going on this introduction, so let's do that. So let's take a look at these two maps again, and then we will start the introduction. So here it says the plans below show a park when it was first opened and the same park today. Okay, again, for the introduction, we want to include paraphrased information for that sentence and a little bit more detail from the images. So let's do that. Okay. I'm going to write the introduction here as well, and then you can kind of see if yours matches somewhat or not. Okay. So introduction. These two diagrams depict Madison Park when it first opened roughly a century ago in 1920, and the same park today in 2023. Let's include the year. Okay. All right. So that would be the more detailed paraphrase of that question. Now, here, I'm going to include a little bit more information. Both diagrams, and I've used diagrams, so here's where I could paraphrase that. Okay, so both pictograms reveal multiple amenities for visitors to enjoy, including some opportunities for entertainment, as well as enjoying natural beauty. Okay, so that's my introduction. What am I looking at here, basically, right? And this is kind of leading into the overview, but not really the overview yet. The overview is going to be a little bit more detailed. It's going to be a little bit more structured, okay? So for the introduction, basically, what I'm telling the reader is that, look, we've got two maps here, one in 1920, a century ago, one today in 2023, and just in slightly more detail for the introduction, we've got some musician stage, a fountain here. We've got the amphitheater here below, which is obviously for the purpose of entertaining visitors. And then we've got all these ponds and rose gardens and children's play areas also for entertainment. We've got rose gardens here, and below we have this water feature as well. So that's kind of some natural features, if you will, that help people to kind of relax and unwind. And so I'm introducing those concepts that I can see that right away in the introduction. Okay. The word amenities is a very good piece of vocabulary there. So amenities are basically places that can be used by people. Okay, so learn that vocabulary. Amenities is a very useful word for the IELTS. I almost always find one or two places, whether in the writing section or in the speaking section, for that vocabulary. Okay, so pay attention to vocabulary. We looked at blueprint before, now we're looking at amenities. And I see that Umra, you picked up on that. Umra's like, okay, amenities. Amenities are basically facilities, places that can be used for people to serve a purpose. Okay. It's quite a general term in English, but it's a very useful one. Okay. All right, so James Nguyen writes, the two maps demonstrate the adjustments that have been changed from 1920 to now in Madison Park. James, it's a bit awkward. I would rephrase that with different words, okay? So the two maps, instead of demonstrate is a little bit strange here. I would say show. Instead of adjustments, I would say changes. Adjustments, it's not really an adjustment. Developments would be a better word too, or changes. Okay. Habibe writes, the two maps give information about Madison Park in the past and today. Habibe, be specific with the past and today, right? So when they tell you what the past is, they tell you it's 1920, you should include that. Okay. And if you know that today is 2023, then you should include that, right? So you're interpreting, you're giving more information. One really good way, everybody, to think about task one is like a presentation. So when you're doing college or university studies and you have a presentation, how many of you have done like a PowerPoint presentation in high school or in university? Okay, think about this question. This is a really good way to think about task one. So okay. Domenico says many times. Okay, well, Domenico, you might agree with me on this. So one of the key pieces when you're showing graphs, charts, maps in a PowerPoint presentation, so when you explain, and the key word here is explain, a graph, diagram, chart in a college PowerPoint presentation, you need to go beyond the numbers that you show on the screen. You have to interpret. Otherwise, and you'll learn this if you've done this, I have, and I've learned it from my professors. So otherwise, your teacher or professor gives you a low mark and states, you were not needed for the presentation as the graph clearly showed the information that you read. In the future, go beyond that information and interpret the data. Okay? Has anybody had this situation where you kind of get this feedback from the professor, like all you did was stand there and just read for us what you had on the PowerPoint, right? So good presentations in college and university, and this is a really good tip for those of you who are planning to study for your bachelor's or master's studies in the US or the UK or Canada, Australia, when you are going to give these presentations, you can't just sit there and read what you have on the board, because you are going to get a very low mark and it will be boring as well. People can read what you have there. So if you put this map onto a PowerPoint for us, we can read that there's a rose garden here. We can read that there's a stage for musicians here. So when you now tell me that there's entertainment, because you're interpreting the stage for musicians and the amphitheater that's kind of below here in the children's play area, and you phrase that as entertainment for visitors, now you're interpreting, now you're making me think like, oh, okay, yes, this, I can see that there's they're focusing on the entertainment aspect of this public place, right? So the interpretation is what you're there for. Does that make sense? Okay, Amra, Domenico, Habibe, it's like a lot of you are there, okay? Okay, Domenico says, I've never gotten into that similar situation, as I was taught that I would have to go beyond the information presented in my presentation. Of course, right? Yeah, I can see lots of thumbs up. Okay. Yeah, Amra says, good presentations should include few words and we should go beyond those. Yes, exactly. So the PowerPoint shouldn't be paragraphs, right? It should just be simple sentences or bullet points that bring up a topic, and then you present or interpret that topic. It's the same concept here. Okay, so when you're looking at task 1, it's the same concept. Instead of verbally giving the presentation in 150 to 200 words, you are doing it in a written format. Okay, so that is the way that you want to think about an IELTS task 1 that gets you a high band score. There are a lot of people, and I think it has to just do with bad information that people see and unclear instructions, but there are a lot of candidates that simply just kind of like a robot, kind of just reiterate what they see. They just turn the image into words. Okay, but that doesn't work for high band scores, so you need to go beyond that. All right, and that's what we're showing here. Okay. All right, Anahita, if you used amenities, you could use the word facilities. Okay, so facilities, amenities, venues, structures. There are quite a few ways to paraphrase amenities. Okay. Exactly, that's another good point, Domenico. So Domenico says, when you interpret the information in the chart, you can't report all the data in your presentation. Exactly. So if you see a line graph or a bar chart with a lot of data, that should immediately signal that, hey, wait a second, I shouldn't just try to like report all the data points here. I have to interpret the main information. That's why the question asks you to report the main features, make comparisons where relevant, right? It's asking you for that interpretation. Why? Because of the need, right? So as Amra said and Domenico said, I've done them so many times that I can't count. So you do a lot of these kinds of presentations and reports in university and work. That's why IELTS Academic includes this type of question to see how well you can do this in English, right? So it makes sense. Okay, so now we do the overview, okay? So in the overview, we want to mention what kind of changes or what we see, right? So here we can see that, you know, there's been significant changes and some similarities. So some parts of these two maps remain the same and several parts change, right? So we can see that, you know, the rose garden, the entrances, they all kind of stay the same here in the maps. And then we can see that a significant change happens in the central region of the park, right? And in the northeastern and southeastern. So most of the park, we can say, has transformed, right? About 70% of the park has transformed. Really, it's just this rose garden up in the western region of the park that has kind of stayed the same. The entrances have stayed the same. Okay, all right. So for the overview, we're not going to get into all the little nitty-gritty details like, oh, there's a new greenhouse or a new water feature instead of the greenhouse, but just kind of the general concept. Okay, so this is the introduction. And members, write the overview from what you've seen so far in these two maps. I'm going to do the same, and again, we'll compare. Okay, so at first glance. Now, this is not template because it really is your first glance. So kind of at your first look, it means without really looking deeper. So at first glance, it becomes obvious that most of Madison Park has been transformed over the course of these 103 years, whereby is a nice connective word. Learn that one. Okay, so whereby kind of means like meaning in this sense. So Madison Park, big P. Okay, whereby many of the natural features and entertainment facilities have been replaced or no longer exist. Okay, all right, so that's my overview so far. Okay, and then if you want to include that the Rose Garden is really the only feature and the entrances are the only feature, that's fine. I'm going to do that in my description and my analyses. Okay, so we don't all have to write the same essay. It just has to be structured well. Okay. Now, here we want to, in the next part, in the analyses, okay, and keep going, members, so keep writing. I'm going to look at what you're putting into the chat. The analyses is kind of the main part of your essay. Okay, that's where you identify 5 to 6 main points, okay, that you discuss in a structured kind of format. And I strongly recommend that you identify those 5 to 6 points before you start writing. So not as you're writing, but before you start writing. Everybody clear on that? That's a really important point, okay? If you're doing it as you're writing, it tends to lead to a more confusing essay. So for the analyses, identify, I'll say 5 to 8. It depends. If some of you are really fast and accurate with your writing, you can even do up to 8 points. Okay, so identify 5 to 8 points of comparison and contrast to write about in a structured format. Okay. All right, Carolina says that makes sense. So for me here, the way I'm going to approach this is I'm going to first just quickly identify what has stayed the same in these two maps, and then I'll focus on all the big differences. Okay, so I'm going to follow kind of the logic of the reading pattern here as well, which is top down, left to right. Okay. So here I'm going to talk about the similarities real quick. I'm just going to, and some of you might say, well, Adrian, but that's not so important. I'm going to leave that till the end. You could do it that way. I'm just going to get it out of the way. So I'm going to explain that the entrance from Arnold Avenue, the Rose Garden in the northwest, and the entrance in the south all remain the same. Okay. And you can see that. So you can see here in 2003 that we have those same rose garden, and the entrances here are the same. Okay. Then for my next step, I'm going to, so that's going to be my number 1. Okay. And then my number 2 is going to be the changes. And the big change that I'm going to describe in number 2, kind of in the same set of sentences or sentence, is this major change to the central region of the park. The stage for the musicians and the fountain, which is replaced by the amphitheater for concerts and a large square rose garden with lots of seating around it. Okay. And then moving further to the east, I'm going to describe that the ponds for plants is replaced by a children's area, and then to the south of that, the greenhouse is replaced by a water feature, and then there's also an entrance to the underground car park. Okay. Now, already when I'm doing these, I think it was 4 in this case, different kind of main pieces that I'm looking at here, I'm also noticing my summary. The summary is, again, an interpretation that we can clearly understand. So it's not an assumption. I'm not going to say, that there's no longer any red roses. All of the roses are now yellow or pink. I don't know that, right? So I can't give information that I don't know. But I can kind of infer a clear piece of information when I look at these 2 maps, especially when I look at the seating here for the amphitheater, and also look at the entrance to the underground car park here. I can already kind of see my summary. So I can see the analysis, and then I can see the summary. What is the summary? What do you think? What am I starting to realize as I'm looking at the changes that happen to this park? And of course, students, this is all happening very quickly, right? So I realize that you only have 20 minutes for task 1. So all of these steps that I'm showing you and explaining in detail really happens fast. It happens in the first 5 minutes of this task 1. What do you think that is? So what am I recognizing here? What's my summary going to be? Yeah, exactly. So Amra says, it looks like the number of visitors have likely increased. Yeah, Amra, we could say that a little bit differently. No, Anahita, the overview and the summary is not interchangeable. In fact, here it would be very awkward to start by saying the number of visitors has increased, because your reader would be like, how did you get that? Let me look at that. And then they have to look at all of the information that you're going to write to realize that, oh yeah, okay, I see why you're saying that because of that and that. But then why are you writing the rest of your essay? So here, no, definitely. Anahita, that was a good question. No, your summary and your overview often cannot be interchanged. Here, it would not make sense to tell the reader at the start of the essay that the park has changed to accommodate a lot more people, because then your reader is looking for, why did you just say that, right? That's not the right logic. You need to explain and then summarize, and then the person says, oh yeah, I can see why that is, because you just explained all those changes, like there's more seats, there's a larger amphitheater, and so on, right? So that makes sense, right? Okay. Habibe says it has become a more attractive place. See, Habibe, that would be a bad summary, because we don't know that. Like, Habibe, the park might, so some people might say that the park was more attractive when it was simpler, when it in its old kind of style. We don't know if it's more attractive. Okay, that's opinion. Okay, it's a very important difference, everybody. So your summary is an inference, not an opinion. Okay, for example, the park is now more beautiful than before. This is opinion, and it is considered incorrect in academic writing. Okay, versus the park can now host more visitors comfortably, or even comfortably is an opinion. I'd take that out. So the park can now host more visitors than a century ago. This is an inference. And this is highly valued in academic writing. Okay. Does that make sense? So you have to be very careful. Okay, again, when you do presentations in university, you will learn this very quickly, because if you give an opinion, you'll get a bad mark. Your professor will say the data does not show that, right? So that's what the professor says. Okay, and in academics, it's very important that the data shows what you say it does, right? It's not an opinion. Okay, so that should make sense. Okay, all right. And again, so for a lot of the examiners, this is very, very clear. So these are concepts that are taught throughout middle school, high school, and college in most English-speaking Western countries like the US, Canada, and the UK, or Australia as well. Okay, so you have to be very careful. You have to be smart about that. All right. Okay, so let's jump into the analyses. Keep writing, students, so I will reflect on your sentences when I have a moment. Okay, so just to reiterate, so far we have the introduction. These two diagrams depict Madison Park when it was first opened, roughly a century ago in 1920, and the same park today in 2020. Both pictograms reveal multiple amenities for visitors to enjoy, including some opportunities for entertainment as well as some natural beauty. At first glance, it becomes obvious that most of Madison Park has been transformed over the course of these 103 years, whereby many of the natural features and entertainment facilities have been replaced or no longer exist. Okay, so far so good. By the way, for all of our viewers watching right now, again, this is a members chat class. You can become a member by joining the YouTube channel. Also, by going to our websites, aehelp.com, clicking the big red button, you can learn all of these tips and strategies in your premium IELTS package. Okay. So make sure to check us out there. Click those big red buttons. While I'm doing this, members, I'm also giving you some chances to catch up and think about what you will write. So you're like, oh, why do I have to listen to this again? Don't. You don't have to. You should be writing your analysis during this time, okay? General IELTS students, again, task 1 is quite different. So click the big red button there, okay? And then in your My Student account, you've got lots and lots of great features in the full online course. You've got lesson videos, and then you've got your task 1 writing. And in your task 1 writing, you have a video that compares two maps. Okay, so you'll see those here. All right. Okay, so lots and lots of videos there for you lots and lots of instructions for you for task 1 as well in your academic course. Make sure to check those out. Okay, so very, very important. All right, aehelp.com. All right, let's jump back into this essay. Domenico writes, at first glance, it can be seen from the 2 diagrams that apart from the 2 entrances, most of Madison Park has undergone drastic changes over the course of the 103 years, whereby many of the areas of greenery have been replaced with some concrete structures. We don't know that, Domenico. We don't know if they're concrete structures. They could be made of wood. Okay? So we know that they're facilities for entertainment. We know that they're man-made structures. We don't know that they're concrete structures. It doesn't say made out of concrete and steel. All right? You have to be careful, Domenico. You really have to think, am I just making this up? Or can I see this? Right? We don't know. Take a look at this, Domenico. We have a fountain in the middle, which probably is a concrete structure. And then that concrete structure is actually being replaced by a rose garden. So we also have some man-made structures being replaced by natural structures. So there's a bit of movement there, right? So we don't really know. And we don't know what the children's play area is like either. We don't know what they use to build that. A lot of the modern playgrounds right now in Victoria, where I live, they're being made out of wood. Just wood. So also there's a cafe here, which is arguably made out of maybe concrete, but we don't know that. Okay, so careful what we say, right? Because we can put emotions into it, but that can be misleading, right? Careful. All right, so I am going to start my analyses here, and I'm going to start with point number 1, which is the rose garden and the entrance to the north and the south at the center of the park from Arnold Avenue and Eldon Street. Okay, so here I'm just going to say going into more detail, because that's what I'm doing here. I'm going into more detail. So going into more detail, the rose garden to the northwest and the main entrances from Arnold Avenue and Eldon Street have remained the same. And of course here I'm using present perfect, right? Have remained the same, showing that there's no change over time. Okay? Now the biggest change, so arguably the largest change here, okay, is the stage for musicians being replaced by the amphitheater for concerts. So conversely, a major upgrade, I would call that an upgrade, to the western central region of the park involves the replacement of a musician's stage by an amphitheater with lots of seating. Okay? All right. So that's that. And then We can say furthermore because it's additive or in addition. Okay? The fountain in the center of the park has been replaced by a square-shaped rose garden. So members, while you're looking at the vocabulary and the grammatical structure of what I'm writing, also write, okay? Remember everybody that this video will be on the YouTube channel and you can look at this later so you can analyze the writing. And in fact, I will also put this essay up on our YouTube community board so you can really analyze it. At this point, also keep writing, and if I don't read or analyze or give you feedback on all of your sentences, don't worry about that because you're still practicing. And if I do give you feedback, hey, that's a bonus, right? So keep writing, keep practicing. And Habibe, Fuang, Domenico, Mal, I see that you're doing a great job in that, so keep that up, okay? So in addition, the fountain in the center of the park has been replaced by a square-shaped rose garden surrounded by seating. Okay, so so far, and you can kind of do it this way too. If not on paper, you can mentally go, okay, check. Let me get a little bit of a smaller pen here. Here we go. So check, 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 check. So all of those places are checked off. Okay. Now I'm moving further to the east, right? I'm going to go this direction here, and then I'm going to move a little bit to the south, that direction there. Okay. And then last but not least, if I still have some time, I'll mention that the rose garden in the southwest no longer exists. Okay? All right, but I've got a lot of writing to do here still. And keeping in mind that I've got about 200, maybe a little bit more words, because then keeping the clock in mind, after 20 minutes, I have to get to task 2. You have to get to task 2 after 20 minutes, okay? You can't be like, oh no, I just spent 40 minutes on task 1. That cannot happen, okay? Because you will get a lower band score, all right? So moving further to the east, right? The rose garden and the pond. Pond for water plants. You don't necessarily have to write for water plants. You can just say pond, right? So again, you can simplify some language, okay? So furthermore, this is kind of a furthermore here. Furthermore carries more emphasis than in addition. So furthermore is stronger than in addition. So furthermore, the rose garden and pond in the northeastern area had been renovated, not renovated, had been developed and is now a cafe and children's playground. Instead of play area, I'm going to say playground because I use the word area here. So I'm always looking to avoid word repetition. So even though here it says children's play area, I'm going to call it a children's playground. A play area and a playground are the same. It doesn't have to have structures to be called a playground. If it's used by children for playing, it's a playground. Okay. All right. Now here, there used to be a greenhouse and some seats, which has become a water feature. Okay. In the southeast, the greenhouse has been replaced by a water feature. Lastly, the rose garden in the southwestern corner of this park no longer exists. Okay. And then my summary. So in summary, it can be inferred that much of the change which has taken place over the last century has happened to accommodate a greater number of visitors to Madison Park. Okay, so that's it. All right, now a really good tip and a really important tip before I look at your writing, and again, I will look at your writing here. So a really important tip for everybody is to review your paragraphs when you write them. Okay, so here, going into more detail, it's a nice leading expression, especially for diagrams, because you go into more detail. So going into more detail, the Rose Garden to the northwest and the main entrance from Arnold Avenue and Eldon Street have remained the same. Conversely, a major upgrade to the western central region of the park involves the replacement of a musician stage by an amphitheater for concerts that has lots of seating. In addition, the fountain in the center of the park has been replaced by a square-shaped rose garden surrounded by seats. Furthermore, the rose garden and pond to the northeastern area have been developed and is now a cafe and children's playground. In the southeast, the greenhouse has been replaced by a water feature. Lastly, the rose garden in the southwestern corner of this park no longer exists. In summary, it can be inferred that much of the change which has taken place over the last century has happened to accommodate a greater number of visitors to Madison Park. Okay, it reads well. A couple of small changes to help it read better or grammatically more accurate. There's a grammar fix there too with the infinitive replacing the present tense. Okay, and then I have my full essay. Let's check out the word count here. Word count is 232 words. Okay, so see how it's not that hard to get into that 200 to 230 range or category here. All right, okay. So that is the whole essay. Now, let me take a look at what some of you are writing. Okay. Let's look at Habibe here. Habibe is being very studious. Habibe, some good writing there. Okay, here we go. So Habibe writes, when looking in detail, big transformation can be observed in Central Park. A big transformation can be observed in the center, not Central Park, in the center of the park. Be careful, Habibe. Central Park has a very different meaning. Central Park is usually the park that's in the center of a city. Okay, so keep that in mind. Central Park, usually the name or reference to a park that is located in the center of a city. For example, Central Park, New York. Okay, so careful, different information there. It's in the center of the park. The fountain has been removed and has been replaced by a rose garden. Okay. Also, a stage for musicians in the west of Central Park in the western center of the park has been replaced by, you replace by something, replaced by not the, but it's an amphitheater. Okay? So again, careful there, Habibe. With those mistakes, you're looking at around a band 5, 5.5. Why? Because some of those mistakes are really confusing. Like Central Park, what are we talking about, right? So careful, careful. Okay, Phuong. Phuong writes, looking in more detail, it is evident that the fountain has been replaced by a, wouldn't say massive, by a large rose garden. Yeah, now I'm finding this a little bit awkward that many of you are starting with the center. Okay, you're like, boom, right there. This is my opinion, okay? And some of you might agree, but some of you might say, nah, you know what, Adrian, I think it's fine. Personally, I think starting with the center of the park is difficult because, especially if I'm not looking at this map, it's hard to figure out what is where if I'm starting from the center and I'm going kind of in all directions. Okay, I think it's probably more logical and easier to conceptualize or to think about or to imagine, if you will, if we kind of start from here and we move through the park in this kind of direction. Okay, so moving in these directions, I think, is easier for us than moving in this kind of a star-shaped pattern through your essay. Do you understand what I mean by that? Does that make sense? So both Habibe and Phuong, you kind of started with the center of the park. And for me, that's an awkward position to start from because it's kind of like I'm sitting in the center of the park and I'm like looking that way. And now I'm looking that way, 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 and now I'm looking that way. And it's kind of like, where am I? I'm getting dizzy. Okay, so that's why me personally, I probably wouldn't start this description from the center. For the viewer looking at the map, it kind of is like, okay, boom, right in the center, right? But when you're thinking about your audience, it doesn't make as much sense. Okay, so I think a very important tip that we get to here for this piece is always think about your audience. Okay, so think about coherence from the perspective of your audience. Okay, it's very important. This is where the essay is not the same as doing a live presentation in the class, right? Okay, so careful with that. All right. So, looking in more detail, it is evident that the fountain has been relocated by a large. It hasn't been relocated, Phuong. It's been replaced. Relocated means that the fountain would be somewhere else in the park, but it's not. Okay, so it has been replaced. Relocated means the fountain has been relocated to the northeast, and there is now a rose garden in the center, but it's not. We don't see the fountain in current day. Okay, replaced by a large rose garden with full seating arrangements, with seating arrangements around each of its sides, right? For visitors to enjoy, unnecessary. It's opinion. Again, besides one minor rose garden, a side is better here. Aside, not beside, but aside. Okay, I'm kind of visually showing you the difference in the meaning. So aside and beside. Okay, so it's like beside, I'm beside my microphone and aside from my microphone. Okay, makes sense? All right. So aside, one minor rose garden. We don't know if it's minor. Okay, Fong, careful with those minor major. Aside from the rose garden in the northwest and both entrances in Madison Park, you need that commas there because you're shifting to the entrances, and both entrances in Madison Park, entrances, okay, aside from the rose garden in the northwest and both entrances, Madison, okay, this is a bit confusing, Fong, so I'm going to have to rewrite it. Aside from the rose garden in the northwest and entrances, Madison Park has changed completely. Okay, you can't use aside with still remains. It's confusing. Okay, be careful. That would be very low band writing. It's a very confusing sentence in that way. Aside from that, it still remains unchanged. It doesn't. It's quite changed. So while the rose garden in the northwest and the entrances remain the same over a century, Madison Park has changed completely. Okay, so lots and lots of fixes needed there. Fwang, careful with that. The way to avoid that, of course, is review. Read it and think about it. Does that make sense? And I'm sure, Fwang, with your English, you'll realize that doesn't make a lot of sense. I need to change that. Okay. Amra, our moderator, has this bit of writing for us here. Let me grab all of that. Okay. Both the main entrances from Arnold Avenue and Eldon Street, as well as the Rose Garden to the northwest, have not been altered. Good. Very clear. Grammatically accurate. Good use of commas. In contrast, an amphitheater with plenty of seats has been built in the western region of the park in place of a musician's stage. Excellent. Clear grammar. Very good. There's also a square-shaped rose garden surrounded by seating instead of the fountain in the center of the park. Good. Okay. A pond for water plants and a rose garden in the northeastern quadrant, nice use of the word quadrant, had been renovated into a cafe and a children's playground. Good. Yeah, and renovated does work here. Absolutely. Yeah, renovated can be used to say changed. Renovated often means it stays the same, the structure, but just becomes a different look or modernized. But it can be used to mean replacing because it's the area or the quadrant that is being renovated. So the quadrant is still the quadrant, just has different amenities. So you can use it here. It does make sense. So far, Amra, that's a band 9. Okay, so for your analysis, that is a band 9 writing. It's clear. I did not find any grammatical mistakes. You can tell that Microsoft Office is not finding any grammatical mistakes either. The vocabulary is accurate. The structure is very clear. It's good interpretation. It's a good movement of the coherence for the audience. So really well done. Okay. Students, I'm going to stop there, but you don't need to. You can finish this essay, and then you can send the essay to me by email, and we'll give you a free band score estimate. So it's one of the kind of fun free features that we include for our viewers. If you send the essay to adrian@aehelp.com or admin@aehelp.com, then we can give you a band score estimate and say, hey, you can expect a band 5 or a band 8 for that essay. And then if you want more information, of course, you can go to the website and figure out why that happened. Sign up for the premium version, aehelp.com. For general IELTS, gieltshelp.com. Again, those are the websites that have all of our materials. This is aehelp.com here. All you have to do is click the big red button that's just above my head there. One-time payment, a lifetime access, lots of videos for task 1, lots of instructions for task 1, lots of help, and for the other sections of the IELTS exam as well. In fact, in the next class coming up in about 45 minutes, we will be using the website for our listening exam, part 3, part 4, continuing from last class. So we're going to use the audio from the websites. This is the general IELTS website here. Click that big red button there. And by the way, students, you can get our products from Shopify as well. So you will see the Shopify products. If you get it from there, make sure to send us an email so we can hook you up as quickly as possible with access to the premium package. Okay. All right. You're very welcome, everybody. All right. Elizabeth, you can do it. You just need to practice. Okay. The road to all good things, or most good things, is usually challenging. If it's an easy road, it might not be the best goal. Okay, students, so next class, it's a subscribers chat class. Make sure to subscribe. Subscribing is free. We have over 2-point-something million subscribers. So become a subscriber so you can chat in the next class. We'll look at listening part 3 and part 4. We'll talk about strategies. We'll finish that exam that we started last week. If you missed it, no problem. You can go back and do that later today, or you can actually look at it during the break and do listening part 1 for that video. And then we'll have some more fun with English and IELTS in 43 minutes. I'm Adrian. I'm signing out from Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, and I will be back shortly. I look forward to seeing you again. aehelp.com, glshelp.com. Thank you, Carolina. Thank you, Amra, for moderating. Thank you, members, for your support. Bye for now.